When you deal with ignorance, you can be consumed by anger. And that's why everything that we walk is a spiritual journey. Because no doubt you have had spiritual awakening because of the passion and because of transforming ignorance and standing for it in the midst. Just like the master teacher on the cross said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Standing in this place of love and forgiveness, recognizing that the only way to heal is by loving, encompassing, and raising the vibration. Love, encompass, and raise the vibration. Not by attacking, not by being stuck in the negativity. So anyone on the spiritual path dances this line of awakening to themselves in a way that they can express wisdom and invite people into wisdom while also holding sometimes a very painful place of patience. We're here to be living legacies. Not just after we go, but while we're alive, no? So, I'm here on this Sunday, this special Sunday, because for me, this is one of the most special Sundays. It's Earth Week. And this week we had Earth Day. And I love bringing attention to the spiritual practice and the environment. Because for a lot of people, they're separate, right? Could the ushers lock the doors real quick? Just kidding. Because today it's all about styrofoam. And we're going to talk about styrofoam for 20 minutes. And at the end of today, I don't think anyone's going to want to touch it again. Amen? No. I did this whole thing. I've developed this whole spiritual pattern about how styrofoam is like our darkness. And we're just going to keep going. Styrofoam. No, I figured instead of doing that, I would ask that every time this would be imprinted on your mind. Every time you're about to grab styrofoam, just think of me crying. Think of me wailing. Think of me alone at home. No, not alone. In a strip mall surrounded by cement with toxic chemicals and a face mask, crying. Do you have it in your mind? That could be some bad mojo my way. Maybe we should cancel that. But really, whenever I speak out about styrofoam, and it drives people crazy, but whenever I do, I always say, I'm doing it for your kids, I'm doing it for your grandchildren. I have no physical children of my own. But it's so important to me that we step into alignment with best practices, that we step into alignment with wisdom when we have it, no? I'm not even going to be here, you know? I'm not going to be here. But there are beloveds that are going to be here. And we have the choice in every moment to create a heaven or a hell out of our existence, to create a heaven or a hell out of life. And I am absolutely committed to doing my part to create a heaven. We all know what humanity is like at its worst. When resources are strained, when the environment is toxic, whether it be a family environment or a cosmic environment. We all know what it's like when we're pushed to our limits. And we all also know what it's like, too, for a moment. Just think about one of those places in nature that you love the most. Just think about it. I have my little spot. In fact, I have nooks all over where I can just stare at the green. I can just stare at plants, or I can stare out the window at a tree, or I can stare at the birds. Just think about what that does. You know, it releases your serotonin. It makes us nicer people. Has anyone been marveling at this spring, watching everything come up? Visited some friends just the other day that just got back from being gone for like 6 months. And at their house, even though they've been gone, magic. Hostas just blooming all over, all this greenery. I mean, it's just like a fairyland. And they weren't even home. It's a miracle, isn't it? It's a miracle. We don't stop enough to watch the miracle. Everything can look like it's dead and dried up. And then all of a sudden, through no effort of our own, springs forth life. Have any of you heard, I might just sit down here the whole time, grounded and connected to the earth. I'm trying to get closer. Has anyone heard that there is the new Bible that's been discovered, the scripture, that's translated in every language? It's out for free. It's available everywhere. Has anyone heard of it? They say it's actually the original teaching. It's the one original Bible. It's the one original truth that anyone, if they're willing to take it on and contemplate it, will unfold the mysteries of creation, the mysteries of nature, the mysteries of mind, the mysteries of humanity, and bring forth the Christ pattern, and bring forth the full wholeness, honoring the full wholeness. Has anyone picked it up, gotten it, seen it? It's the earth. It's nature. It's our environment. It really is. It's nature. Nature is the greatest conversation that God consciousness is having with us. It can meet any person, no matter where they are born or what system they come from or what has been put in their mind. It is freely given and available to everyone. And if spiritually contemplated, and there's whole sects of spiritual groups that will contemplate the earth and its workings, contemplate nature, not just the earth, but the whole cosmic universe, right? But contemplate this nature to have spiritual awakenings. There is no one on the spiritual path that goes far, far, far along the spiritual path that then doesn't develop an intense reverence for the majesty of nature. The earth has within it keys to our awakening, keys to our spiritual growth and development. It is the one thing that is really able to translate go through all boundaries, able to translate to anyone, that anyone willing to contemplate it. Just think about some of the ideas. When we pull the nature out, one of our congregants is a developer, or I don't know if you want to say a developer, but has committed his life to sustainable development, to building housing that has almost zero waste, that is completely effective and efficient, that honors the land that it's built on. And in that practice, that's the opposite of what tends to happen, right? What tends to happen is that we clear the earth. We take out everything that is magnificent in nature, take out all the old growth that is really bringing oxygen spiritually, but bringing oxygen emotionally, no? Has anyone driven through like a not so great area and thought, this area, if it had old growth trees, like you could just do drawings, just picture it in your mind. Here's one of the ugliest buildings you've seen, right? With no green around it. Put sidewalks, pavements, pave paradise. Now picture it with old growth trees, with gardens and hostas and food growing just out of the ground. Picture it. Different field, right? Totally different field. So it models our spiritual growth when we look at that. If you tear out the nature, you rip out the nature, and you become totally inefficient, not honoring what's there, what happens? It's desolate. It's not nurturing. What happens is that your environment actually feels like it's against you. Look at seeds. Seeds are a perfect spiritual example. The book of seeds. In the book of seeds, it says that within that seed is everything. Everything that is needed for the growth. Does that not sound like our truth? Everything that is needed for your spiritual growth and your development is within you. That doesn't preclude you from getting water and getting fertilizer. That doesn't preclude us from interacting with our environment and having those connections that seemingly are outside of us come into us and in harmony resonate with us and nurture our being and grow us. What about this? Yeah, I know, I love it. The book of Seeds. Now the book of Seasons. Do they not model our lives? Sometimes it seems like all the life is gone, but there it is underground. There it is underground. In a time of quiet, in a time of hibernation, but no less powerful, no less real. Just because it's sometimes my eyes cannot see everything that is in this infinite universe, just like matter itself, what we see is only what tiny little percent of what actually is existent. Well, so too is the human condition, operating on that same pattern. That sometimes all of the life, I can't see it, but that doesn't mean for a second it's gone. That doesn't mean for a second it's gone. It means that there's a season, right? And there will be a rebirth because still all that is needed and necessary is within that. And there will be another season, another coming back, a growth. Even the trees themselves, the gospel of trees, they say release what is dead and not growing. Release what no longer serves you. What about demonstrating oneness? We cannot be separate. It is impossible to be separate. The earth, the environment, the nature teaches us that. You have an impact right here, you'll see the effects of it here, 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 here. You cannot be separate. Separation from self, separation from God, separation from others is absolutely, simply impossible. If contemplated, if we bring our questions, the gospel is written all around us in this world. The gospel is written all around us. There is no question that we cannot look for a divine pattern and say, We are constantly being urged to grow in alignment with truth, in alignment with spiritual principle. And when we do, when we steward that, when we step into alignment, there is this magnificent grace that unfolds within us and around us. We receive more than we even earn. We get back more than we put in. But we, in the human condition, still have the choice and still have the opportunity to stomp our good with greed, to stomp our good with ignorance, to stomp our good with illusions and separate self-thinking. But there is a great awakening. And that great awakening is ours to have in every moment. Look, I'm stuck on my earth skirt. I started before college, actually, on the path of environmentalism. John Denver has a foundation that's in Colorado, and that foundation supported me going on this trip called Earth Train, and that train went across the country speaking to high schools all across the nation. I was in high school at the time, about the environment, about stewardship. And then I went on to go to Russia and do some leadership work, and I went on to go to CU Boulder in Colorado for environmental studies. But then something happened, if you know me at all. Something happened when I was there, and by the time I got out, I had such a let's just say, if I was to get involved in that movement, I wouldn't have been helpful. So I honored Stan for being able to transmute that energy, to stay positive, to keep giving, to keep teaching in the midst of ignorance and not get consumed by that anger. I was very clear that I would not make it. I was very clear that I would not be able to be helpful because it was too heartbreaking. It was too heartbreaking. And so what I did, I made a commitment to support those that have the endurance to be in the trenches, to support and tie to those organizations that can be in that energy and still be positive, still use their energy to transmute. Because if we know anything in unity, right, it's that we can't stand in negativity, we can't stand in condemnation, we just can't stand in it and heal. We can't stand in it and heal. We have to heal from the consciousness of love, from the consciousness that encompasses, from the consciousness that is a healing vibratory energy. Otherwise, we create more of the like. So I went into ministry instead. But I still have my heart there. I still have my heart there. What does the environment have to do with spirituality? Do we get it? Do we get it? That there is a great oneness. There's some unity authors, and I'm going to share with you some quotes from these unity authors about wholeness. Newton Dillaway says, "There is in the universe an incessant flowing, but also an incessant ascension, or a whole-making power that is propelling all things to fulfillment in wholes, or a higher series of wholes." Another author says, "As we begin to change our thought patterns to ideas of health and wholeness, we will also begin seeking a way of life to complement this new mental attitude. We will begin seeking a life, we'll seek activities, we'll seek action that complements this mental attitude of wholeness. That's walking up the spiral of spiritual development. To see wholeness. The more we don't see as other and we don't see as separate, the more we realize what I do to other, I do to myself, the more that we realize that we live, move, and have our being in this cosmic consciousness we call God, the more we recognize our part in the pattern, the more we elevate our activity, elevate our awareness. Sig Paulson said, when we become aware of the harmony and right places of all parts of creation, we will operate together as a simple being. We will operate together as a simple being, one simple being. In this situation, he says, we could not consider doing anything harmful to ourselves. The brain of the world would not beat on its own hand, would it? This oneness will be realized when the underlying will of the Creator is recognized as the central theme of creation. He goes on to say, we live in a universe that is a unity, a totality. It is wholeness. Each one of us is an expression of that to the degree to which we understand it. To the degree to which we understand it. And Charles Fillmore said, we should understand that we are not separate nor insignificant, but vital, important, integral parts of a mighty whole. That's us. Vital, integral parts of a mighty whole. So what's the problem? The problem, right, is that we don't operate like that, do we? Not generally. It's not the norm to operate like we are sacred parts, vital parts of a mighty whole. The reality of the problem is that there's corruption. There's interests. This is the human reality, right? There's interests thwarting efforts. Do you know that there's a lot of cities that have banned styrofoam? The whole city, DC, San Francisco, Minneapolis. Cities have banned styrofoam, and then New York went to ban styrofoam, but New York's a pretty big place, right? A lot of impact right there. They were trying to get 300,000 tons of garbage out of the system because they found after doing their studies that it's not really recyclable. They collected it, but it's not really recyclable because there's no market for it and it's not fiscally efficient or effective to do that. So they banned it. Has anyone heard that? They banned it last year. And then what happened? The special interests got together and launched a campaign, and they overturned it. They overturned it and said, no, you can't do that. And they took it off the radar. And that effort was led by, who do you think? A company that makes, right. There are people and there are places that are pooling together and standing up for integrity, right? We're seeing it all over. We're seeing the rise of the people again, the rise of the consciousness, and breaking through an illusion that corporations or governments are really what's running things. Now, that doesn't seem like, if even I say that, did you hear that and go, come on, really? Corporations and governments are not running things. Do you believe that? Even the little parts of it that might be angry, the little parts of us that might be consumed with the illusion, are being invited to and called to stand up and say, that is truth. That is truth. It won't happen if we're not awake. It won't happen if we're not aware. It won't happen if we're so sedated by our daily lives and our issues that we're not paying attention. If we're not paying attention, we'll miss it. But if we simply pay attention and open up spiritually to listening and stand in our spiritual presence and our spiritual voice, we will have a world that is for the people and by the people. Oxfam put out that latest report saying the 62 richest billionaires own as much wealth as the poor half of the world's population. That's, people you could fit on a bus. You could drive a bus of them around. That bus full of people has more wealth. 73 million people are richer than the rest of the world's 7.5 billion. And there's a trend showing that 1% of people own more wealth than the other 99% combined. In Unity, one of our vision statements is to co-create a world that works for all. To co-create a world that works for all. So we commit to that. And when we commit to that, we bring it into fruition. I had a friend and congregants that recently went to China, and I was so happy to hear all the stories, but sad to hear the one part of when they got their face masks so that they could put on those masks like a painter's mask so that they could go around different areas, that they were all given a mask. This is a current physical reality. In the ocean, there's sonic blasts that are killing the wildlife in the ocean. There's radiation, plastic. You've seen the things about plastic. You know, even an albatross, their stomachs, you can see some of these dissections of albatrosses that actually feed their young, I think, by regurgitating what's in their body, and their stomachs are full of plastic. Full of plastic. This is because we're not cleaning up after ourselves. Like we teach our children to do, right? We teach our children, clean up your space. I was having a conversation and it was brought to my attention to contemplate this idea that the way we live in our home is the way we live our lives. The way we live in our home is the way we live our lives. So can we expand that to think the way we live in the planet, the way we live on the planet? How we treat the planet is how we live our lives. It's the foundation from which we live this life. Same thing of how we treat our home. How do we care for it? Do we care for it? There are suggestions that we need to put within the cost of anything that we buy, the expense of what it takes to break that back down. Do you know that there are even children that are banding together to bring court cases to our attention to sue because of their future? Because we're being so messy that they're saying, hey, I got a right to something. I got a right to this planet, and you're not doing a very good job with it right now. So if I want to play by your rules, let's go to court. You know that there's a ton of food that is wasted because it doesn't fit the dimensions and the specifications that we allow in our grocery stores. So you have farmers that have nurtured the ground, gotten God's seed into fruit, vegetable, but our society has become such, just like people do it to themselves, if there's a blemish, I'm going to devalue it. So there's so much good food going to waste. Medicine, problems with medicines, GMOs, hormones in things, the plastic packaging being absorbed, the rainforest being cut down, even nature's herb being banned, CBD, and I'm saying that from the platform. There are children that can be healed from epilepsy, not healed, but it can ease their epilepsy, and we're choosing to put them on chemically made, human-made, addictive, harmful things because there is this paranoia about the marijuana plant, even when you take out the things that, create hallucinogenic effects. That's nature. That's like saying basil is banned. You need this supplemental chemical that you can shake on your food that tastes like basil, but no more can you have basil because someone decided that it is dangerous. This planet is what is sourcing us as God and expression. Are we going to honor it? Are we going to use wisdom, not allow corruption to take us places, but use wisdom and apply it and create, co-create? That was all the bad news. If we stay asleep at the wheel, does anyone need the serotonin salt lick yet? Here's the good news. The good news is this. In this book that I was reading recently, it's called Abundance. The future is better than you think. The author says this. He talks about how we underestimate, he says we seriously overestimate ourselves. He says we overestimate our attractiveness, we overestimate our work ethic, we overestimate all of these things about ourselves, which is really interesting. He says we overestimate those things, but we significantly underestimate the world at large. We significantly underestimate the world at large. He says human beings are designed to be local optimists, right here an optimist, but global pessimists. And he talks about this being a big problem for abundance. A big problem for abundance. He explores the concept of overcoming cynicism and pessimism and the psychological blocks that keep us from believing. And he notes that our beliefs shape our reality. Our beliefs shape our reality. So the spiritual practice is not about getting stuck in any limited idea. It's not about buying into any system of limitation or human illusion. It's not about making an agreement with a limitation, but it's also about being aware of it. There's a critical need for the belief that we make and remake our world, that the world and the environment and God consciousness is on our side, because this is the truth. In our favor, that in fact there lies a field, a realm where nothing is a problem. Nothing is a problem. And I don't say it's not a problem in the way that we want to ignore that things are happening, right? Ignore that science is happening. Not in a way that says, oh, there's nothing I could do about it anyway. Not in a way that limits my participation. Not in a way that I give up. Or in a way that I block my mind and just sit there and go, I can't hear you, I can't hear you, I can't hear you, because it's too much. Not in that way, but it's not a problem because there is no problem when it comes to ideas. There is simply a problem of commitment. There is no problem when it comes to solutions. It is only a problem of vision. There is no problem when it comes to abundance. We are abundantly blessed, abundantly supplied. There is a problem when it comes to distribution. But vision, distribution, commitment, all of these things are in our power, are they not? Amen? All of these are in our power. In our power. Paul Farini, one of my favorite authors, said, all creation is really co-creation. You determine what you want, commit to it, and move forward to it. And the opportunities you need to realize your goals come your way, no? So once we make the commitment, then all the opportunities come our way. So there is not a problem. Eckhart Tolle on the spiritual journey, on the spiritual practice says, always say yes to the present moment. Surrender to what is. Say yes to life and see how life starts suddenly working for you rather than against you. But that step is to surrender, not to ignore what's going on, to accept it, to accept what is. It simply is. This is the state that is. Can I accept it? And recognizing in my accepting it, I'm not making an agreement with it, but I am surrendering so that more can unfold, so that good can come. He says that a second thing on the spiritual practice is that we can't complain about it. We can't complain about it because he says to complain is always non-acceptance of what is. It invariably carries an unconscious negative charge. When you complain, you make yourself a victim. When you speak out, you're in your power. So change the situation by taking action or by speaking out if necessary or possible. He says that fear, we have to shift and transform fear. No, is fear preventing you from taking action? Simply acknowledge the fear, acknowledge it, watch it, take your attention into it, be fully present with it. Doing so cuts the links between fear and your thinking. Don't let the fear rise up into your mind. Use the power of use the power of the now, and fear cannot prevail against it. Use the power of right now, and fear cannot prevail against it. But if we turn our heads, if we get stuck in these complaining and this fear and the negativity, or if we turn our heads and say, well, there's nothing I can do, it will keep expanding and keep expressing. There will be more places where we need masks, more places where we can't see the earth. You know, even the Miami coastline apparently has so many skyscrapers that if you're not on the front row, right, if you're not in that bus of 62, if you're not in the front row, you can't even see the ocean. How is that creating a world that works for all? Are we committed to that? So here's 3 steps. Here's 3 invitations. The first is to think about what we import and what we export, because we are demonstrating for the world how to live on this planet. And we are demonstrating in our own lives, in our own way, how to teach our children, models. So what are we exporting? Is it trash? Is it trash consciousness? What are we importing? I suggest that we be importing evolutionary ideas, that be our primary import. Evolutionary ideas, ideas that transform life on this planet, and that our highest export be wisdom. That our highest export be wisdom. So think about that. Let us each think about that in our daily lives and in our global life. The second invitation is to step into responsibility and to move from enforcement to leadership. From enforcement to leadership. If we don't clean up our space, what happens? We need to hire someone and they clean it up for us. If we can't follow best practices, what happens? We need to make laws to keep people in alignment. But there is another way to live, and it's to live by consciousness. And it's that even if they overturn the ban in New York City, it shows people, there's an idea here, right? And let me step forward of my own volition, of my own consciousness to create and to lead in this area. That's what the kids are doing. They're stepping forward to lead. And they're saying, I don't need a rule. I don't need a law. I don't need you to ban it or tell me I can't have it to do best practices. I will lead from that place, and I will create it, and I will create a movement, and I will draw higher consciousness to me, and people will recognize it, and it will become the norm because it is full in consciousness first. We must take the leap from needing enforcement to do the right thing, to creating demand for the right thing, to creating demand within our companies and within our corporations and within our governments, because we're standing in our principles and standing in our practice. We are causing healthy choices, and we are leading from consciousness, not from enforcement. And the last is one planet living, to look into one planet living. The former UN Secretary General Annan said, our biggest challenge in this new century is to take an idea that seems abstract, sustainable development, and to turn it into a reality for all of the world's people. We are here to do that. We are here to do that. And if all of this doesn't make sense, if we search our hearts and really there's no care for the planet, for Earth, for God's creation, for nature, if really there is no care for that, and we think, I'm going to be here for how many years, then I'm going to be gone, whatever. Entertain this thought. Entertain this thought. There will be a time, most likely, if we look at history and we look at science, that there's not a person left on this planet. Not a person left, that we will be extinct. Either we will make ourselves extinct, or some cosmic happening will happen, a meteor coming in from somewhere and like the dinosaurs. There will be a time where humanity is probably not on the planet. So contemplate the idea that these teachings are spiritual teachings, not even about the planet at all, but they are here for our spiritual awakening and our spiritual development. Because if we demonstrate and model these ways of living, we are demonstrating and modeling our soul growth. It is a spiritual practice that goes beyond time and form. It's about being a spiritual being and the raising of vibrational consciousness. Namaste.